I'm Kara Ray, founder of the Powerful and Uncensored Entrepreneurs. I'm a mother, stepmother to 3 beautiful children. I'm a wife and a proud entrepreneur. I'm a mindset coach specifically for the powerful and ambitious online female entrepreneurs who desire to create wealth and abundance in all areas of their life. The Powerful and Uncensored Mompreneur podcast is for the ambitious women and mothers who are ready to rise together and empower one another. Get plugged in each week for unfiltered and uncensored conversations between myself and industry leaders who are here to support you. They have unwavering points of views and empower women to believe in themselves. We will be discussing business, spirituality, sexuality, energy, strong points of views, manifestation, and what I like to call breaking the stigma topics, conversations that will no longer be silenced. This is a safe place to reclaim your power of being a woman. Let's dive in. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Powerful and Uncensored Mompreneur podcast. So today I'm extremely excited because I have Terry Gosselin. Did I say your last name correctly?
You did.
Yes. Okay. I have this thing with names, and I talk about this, I swear, on almost all of my episodes where I want to make sure everybody's name is correct. And sometimes I've sabotaged them, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. So I'm glad I got yours correct. This is good. So
Yeah.
welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So you guys, Terry is an inner peace alchemist and healer. So using a compassionate and gentle and encouraging approach, Terry helps women who have suffered great loss, whether it be loss of a loved one, loss of self, or loss of passion. So she truly allows women to embrace their authenticity at their soul essence and enabling them to discover their strength within to persevere, heal from the inside, and find a deep inner peace. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you and to chat with you because I haven't had anybody come on here who can discuss this. And so welcome. I'm happy to have you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kara. I'm so excited to be here.
So I always ask the women who come on the podcast this one question. Everybody gets this question. And the question is I want to know if you are celebrating anything in your life right now, whether it's business, personal life, or both. What are you celebrating right now? Let's celebrate it. Let's talk about it.
Oh my gosh, what a fun question. I love celebrating so much. And so right now, I think right now I'm celebrating opening day for my kids' baseball games this coming weekend. It's a big deal, spring sports in my house. So I'm celebrating the last several weeks of intense practices, actually having a game, and just getting back to being my baseball mom status, which I absolutely love.
See, and I love this because as a mom, I'm a stepmom too, and my stepson plays hockey. And so usually my sports run through the winter and we have practice, and then we have games, and the games are probably, it's an exciting time for parents because you get to be proud of your kids, you get to cheer them on, and you also get to have fun with the other parents. So I fully relate. And there's total, celebration is key for kids too. So
yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, it's so important. I read an article recently about just being present at your kids' games or whatever event that they're doing, and just being present and cheering them on, and just them knowing that you're there provides them this safety and this comfort. And I really feel like that's so true. And it brings me great joy to be able to see them having so much fun and just being in their element, enjoying, time with their friends and a sport that they love. And it warms the mom heart.
It does. And even, my stepson had a rough year with hockey this year. Some kids were bullying him on the team, and we ended up dealing with a lot of meltdowns, a lot of frustration on his point. So as a parent, it was really difficult to watch that inner struggle that he had, and he didn't really know how to communicate it. And so, watching him eventually be able to communicate it and then finish off the season really strong and understand that those children, they were portraying something that potentially was going on with them onto him. And it was just nice to watch him go through it. So even as a parent in those aspects, when you're watching kids go through sports and they're learning and they're growing and they're getting older, it's really nice to just, be in that energy. So I really like that we chatted about this because I totally love celebrating my kids' sports, and it's I have so many friends and, people I connect with that don't have children. And so it's nice to be able to be like, yes, I totally get what you mean.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's so funny because, I look to find something to celebrate every single day, no matter how big it or small it is. But this is on the forefront. I mean, we have like 4 practices this week. So I'm like, let's get to the game day. Let's go. I'm ready to put on my baseball mom shirt and rock it out. So
Yeah. Yeah. So in regards to, I have a question for you because I know people
yeah.
are probably curious about, when I introduced you and the word alchemist.
Yeah.
So can you explain for our listeners, what exactly, or in your terms, is an alchemist?
Yeah. So for me, I'm an inner peace alchemist. So I'm helping um,
Yes.
this transformation from a place of chaos or loss or pain, and transforming that to rediscover joy and, of course, peace, and just being able to like take those small little celebrations in life and be present in those moments. So often, and I've because I've been there, when you go through loss of a loved one or just losing yourself in the process, we often just go through the motions of the day to day and completely lose sight of the magic and the beauty and the amazingness around us. And so my goal is to help women, find that magic again, to be able to transform and just truly live a life after loss, because life is so beautiful. And so that's what it means to me. And I also like it because by training, I'm a scientist. So alchemy is, chemical in
Yeah.
nature. So it feels so aligned to just kind of my background and who I am. So yeah.
Well, I wanted you to explain that just because I know that some listeners are probably curious to know, like, what is that? I'm curious.
Yeah.
Interesting. And so, because I really have had, like I was saying earlier, I've had nobody on the podcast who can discuss these kinds of things, or even in regards to loss at this different level. And so, and on a personal level as well. And so I know that you and I shared a little bit of a conversation, but are you willing to talk a little bit about the background as to why you felt called into this area, into this, why you really truly felt that this was something you needed to do, not only for yourself, but also for others? And I know you've shared with me, so I want you to share from your heart what you feel comfortable sharing, and then we can just kind of carry through there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Yes. So, almost 11 years ago, I lost my younger brother suddenly, about 3 weeks before my wedding day. And having never experienced much loss, as in death, before, this was quite the shock to lose your 22-year-old brother, and on the heels of your wedding, like the biggest day that you've been planning to date. And so I kind of spiraled for the first year, with reeling with how to cope with my emotions and how to grieve.
Mm-hmm.
And um, and with that also being a newlywed. And then from there, it's kind of like life kind of took me on this ride. And I experienced more loss. I had a miscarriage within our first year of marriage. And then we lost a puppy. And so it just felt like the world was starting to fall around me. And um, then it's so interesting. Like, I kind of continued on my day to day, kind of, went to my job and did stuff with friends, but I started to feel this empty place inside, because I wasn't really honoring my emotions. I wasn't taking the self-care that I really needed. I just thought, okay, well, I'm in this immense, enormous pain, but I have to keep going because this is what you do in life, right? You just keep going. And I was all the while so getting really depressed because it's like everyone else's life around me had just continued on. It's like they kind of forgot about my brother. And I didn't want that to happen, right? So then over the next few years, we added to our family and we lost more family members all around the same times. It was just this constant like reminder of how, you know, the beauty of life coming into existence and then how life ends. Mm-hmm. And it's a cycle. But for me, because I wasn't taking that time to really explore and just feel those emotions, it just started to become this empty space. And it did this for several years. And then it started turning into anger and bitterness and frustration, and kind of like I was on this cog of life and not really sure where I was going anymore. Not even sure what was lighting me up, despite the fact that I had a beautiful family and a great job and success and a house and everything from the outside looked picture perfect, but everything on the inside felt empty. And so several years ago, I started working with a therapist, and we started diving into some of these things of, why don't you journal? Let's talk through this. Let's do this. And I was not interested whatsoever, was not about it. But I wanted to talk through and see if that could help. And it did. And then probably about almost 2 years ago now, I had an incident, a health scare, so to speak, that kind of woke me up, because I was young and it was scary to think about what could happen if this turned out to be cancer. And so I had surgery, and it was not cancer, thankfully, but it kind of like gave me this new lease on life to explore and be able to truly live it. Like, not the way I had been, where it was kind of this just mundane day-to-day kind of spiral that didn't feel good. It wasn't magic. It wasn't beautiful. It wasn't anything that what life really should be about, why you're here. And so I started exploring spirituality a little bit more. I'd lost my faith when my brother died. And because I questioned, why would this happen? And it just kind of came back to me. And the signs of, in regards to signs, I went to a medium and spoke with her, and my brother came through, and I learned about signs that he has for myself and my sister and my mom. And then I started seeing those signs. And the main sign is a dragonfly. And so that same summer that I had my surgery, I started seeing dragonflies everywhere. And it was like, okay, I see you, Joe. My brother's name was Joey. I see you. You're here. It's time to like figure out what this is and take the next steps to create my life. Mm-hmm. And so I, stumbled into some spiritual Facebook groups. And then I stumbled into the world of coaching and had come across some amazing women that are doing incredible things with mindset and confidence. And I was attracted to that because clearly I was in a space that was looking for that shift. Yeah. And so ever since I started exploring that and kind of came to realize that, all of the pain that I've been through is exactly what I'm here to do. That these signs and these experiences were to teach me on how to be even more empathetic, and how to show an extraordinary compassion, and how to help people discover what self-care is for them. Yeah. And what feels good to them, and how to use that in their everyday life. And then also bringing in even more spiritual stuff and energy healing and all of these really, they're woo, but really really magical things that are fun. And actually a lot of them, it's so funny, as I've been done my own deep inner work the last several years. So many things that have come back to imagination and play and childhood. And so it makes sense that to bring all of that back into your life where things seem more fun and it's not as heavy. And so that's what I'm here to do, is to take these heavy pieces when the people are ready to go through that, because to get to that place of joy, to get to that place of peace, you do have to work through some of the deeper seated things that maybe you've put off for 10 years or even longer. I mean, a lot of these things that you condition yourself to happen in childhood. And so if that becomes part of your pattern, then it takes a lot of peeling the layers. But once you do and you start to see the glimmer of light, it's just incredible. And then it just keeps expanding because you start to really see this true shift in your mindset and your ability to be aware and see things from a different vantage point. And it's really a beautiful thing.
So I love everything that you are, discussing. And I also just want to say thank you for sharing, because it's an extremely vulnerable piece for you, but I know that it is really, added as to why you were doing what you're doing and why you felt called. But I know, I always say thank you to those who share from such a vulnerable place. And so thank you. And I know there is definitely going to be listeners who relate. I'm sitting here and I relate to you on many different levels. And especially in regards to, this loss of faith, this loss of, this questioning, because, when I was a child, I loved the woo. So when you talk about woo, I'm very much spiritual and woo myself. So I'm always here for it. Love it. I'm here.
Love it.
And as a child, I was able to see auras, and I was a lot more intuitive than a lot of people that I knew. And so I felt very odd. And at a young age, I had lost grandparents, and I was close to, and in a very short time frame. And I started questioning why someone or something would take those that I love so deeply, and why it would happen so fast without any warning or any notice. And all of a sudden it was just gone, and how you were supposed to just walk into this life and continue going without this person who had such a major impact on your life. There was so many questions that came up. And so I really, I love that you touched on that, because that's huge for so many people, where they start questioning their faith or who they are or what they're doing in all aspects of their life. Because through then, I suppressed my spirituality for years and years and years, honestly, until the last 3 years of my life, when I started bringing it back into play. And, when you were talking about signs, my grandmother, when she passed away a few years ago, always told us that if we saw blue butterflies, that would be her. And where I live, you don't see a lot of blue butterflies. So when you see a blue butterfly, you're like, oh, yes, okay.
You're like, hi, Grandma. Exactly.
Yeah, literally, my husband, we were on our honeymoon last year and we were mini golfing, and he was like, whoa, stop. He's like, there's a blue butterfly. And I was like, what? And so, and there
That's
was,
amazing.
and it was just the most beautiful little blue butterfly. And so it's incredible. The signs are there if you're paying attention to them, or if you're open to receive them, because it's there.
Exactly.
People talk about, dimensional and all these different things that people are able to see and not see. And I still believe, no matter what people believe in, whether that's God, universe, Buddha, whatever this higher power is you believe in, it's, it's there. There's something more. There's something bigger than just you and I, for example.
Absolutely.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's true. There really is. And once you start, if you've lost it and then you start reconnecting back, and then you realize that not only is there something bigger, but you feel this calling and there's something inside that's telling you that you're here to do something bigger with them, through them. Yes. And it's really powerful.
I agree. And that's exactly why. So when I first met my husband and things were shifting and changing and I was diving back into it, I remember him saying to me, I know that you're finding yourself and you're doing all these things for yourself, but I don't want you to fall out of love with me. He was scared that I was going to move into finding who I was always meant to be. But I told him, as we're growing and as I'm growing, I said, we get to grow together. We're always evolving. And so if we're not communicating, that's when we have a problem. If we're not trying to meet each other and know what each other wants, that's when we have a problem. But if we're being honest with each other and we want to better ourselves, then I'm here for it. And I'm not
Yeah,
falling out of love with you. I said, if anything, I'm going to fall deeper in love with you because I'm actually falling in love with myself, which is a big thing.
absolutely. Yes, it
And
really is. I mean,
so,
self-love is like so major, and it helps see everything else around you with a different viewpoint. Like
yeah.
it's really amazing.
And as you grow older, you view death in such a different way as you did as a child too. And actually 3 years ago, just under 3 years ago, a best friend of mine ended up dying suddenly.
So
And I
sorry.
remember receiving this phone call, and like the whole world came crumbling down in a second, where you couldn't breathe, you thought someone was lying to you, you became angry, you became just filled with these emotions. Like I actually remember dropping to the floor. Like you see those things in movies and you see how people act, and you're like, oh, that'll never happen to me. And then it happens and you can't breathe and you can't speak, and the emotions just flow. Like I have goosebumps talking about it because it's not something that I've openly talked about, but loss is huge. And so
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about like this feeling of loss of self identity and just like this loss of self. And,
Mm.
when you're talking to women and you're guiding them through something and they feel like completely just out of tune with themselves, like what is something that you would try to help guide them through? Like what would be a guidance that you would want to provide them if they're completely feeling lost within themselves?
Well, first, I always want to say to be gentle with themselves through it, because oftentimes when we're feeling lost, we have to come back and rediscover who we are. And that takes some work. I mean, it takes, a huge shift in what you are surrounding yourself with, including like your self-talk
Mm-hmm.
and the thought processes that we go through. Because oftentimes I'm speaking from experience with myself. When I was in a space where I was completely lost, I looked at the world like it was glass half empty.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's how I felt inside. So what I was seeing was a mirror of inside of what was going on within me. And so, how I help women through this is to also just to let them know, one, to be gentle with yourself and to have compassion for yourself as you go through this, because inner work and healing are beautiful things, but they are also really messy,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really can be painful, and it brings up these emotions and triggers and things that, especially if you've been in a void state of not feeling those things, and then all of a sudden you're feeling this, you're like, what is wrong with me?
Yes.
So, I provide them this safe container to be able to be vulnerable when they're ready, and
Yeah.
to know that it's okay to be vulnerable, that they're safe and supported, and to be able to also help them with their energy. I use a lot of work with the chakra system, so helping them to root in and to ground themselves in knowing that they are safe to be who they truly are once they're ready to come back home to themselves. And with that is a lot of self-care, and really trying to discover what works for them.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes we think of self-care, and I'll just say this because this is how I was. Oh, let me go to Target by myself, do some shopping. I'll spend over $100, $200 here and there, and I'm going to drink a Starbucks, and it'll be amazing. And then I'll get a pedicure. And those are things of self-care, trust me, because after a hectic day with the kids, I I will take a trip to Target and I
Yeah.
will enjoy it. Enjoy my hot coffee to the fullest. But self-care it first of all looks different for everybody. And I think oftentimes at different times it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
So some days I feel like taking a walk and just being one and like really observing my surroundings in nature, and just kind of breathing in the fresh air and doing some deep breathing techniques. But one of my favorite ones, and I help guide women through, is really doing a lot of deep breathing, kind of allowing themselves, especially if they're in a moment where they're feeling chaotic inside or unsure or not clear, to kind of come back within themselves and do some deep inner breathing and kind of reconnect back to their heart. And I know that sounds completely woo, but it's so true. When you come back into your heart and into yourself and just think about the now, like being grateful for the breath that you're able to take this moment, being grateful for the gorgeous sun or the shift in spring weather, or just that, if they're really stressed out about work or something, taking a deep breath and saying, I've got this. Like being able to come back in and kind of take it from this state of chaos and loss and fear into this state of trust and love and knowing. And it takes work to get there, but when you start implementing certain techniques and what works for you, like journaling, I'm a huge proponent of journaling now, even though I said no way several years ago. Now I don't even know what I would I don't even know what I would do without it. And meditation works for some people. There's so many different things, yoga, deep breathing, but being able to kind of walk that path and figure out what it is to help them start to rediscover that inkling within themselves as they gently do it with compassion, to start looking beyond that void feeling and knowing that there is this place, that you can get to this place, and that you have a guide here to help you through it.
I love everything that you just touched on, because I'm a huge advocate for self-care.
Yes.
And I love how you talked about how it really can look whichever way you want it to look, because I remember having discussions with so many people about how they were overwhelmed by what self-care was supposed to look like, or what a spiritual practice was supposed to look like. And, I've done small trainings on them where like it gets to be what you ultimately want it to be. And there has to be no complication at all. And you don't have to have yoga. You don't have to know all the chakra system. You don't have to have the journaling and the reading and all the things in one to have a spiritual practice. You could say, hey, I woke up and did some meditation this morning, and that's what I choose to be a spiritual practice. And it could grow and grow. And I think it's just beautiful, just giving women that permission that it gets to be ultimately what they want it to be. And that compassion piece, that's been something that I've been discussing with women lately, is about having self-compassion and really, going back into your heart and anchoring back in. And so I love that we're having this discussion, because
me too.
As the universe aligns everything, so is this conversation. Like
100%.
Being like, wow, how, this is why, you guys, we have tried to get together and talk a few times, but it was because we had to wait, because things had to happen, and now we're here, and we're just sitting here like, wow, like at least I am. And so
I am too.
And
it's
so
funny.
Also, I think a huge thing to touch on in regards to, grief, loss, and even the self-loss and identity, society has really taught people how they should act or shouldn't act in regards to loss or who they are as a person. I feel like society wants to put people in a box, and really we don't fit in a box. Like one thing, and these emotions are, people, I've had conversations with a few women recently about their emotions. Mm-hmm. And how they feel that they can't be open about their emotions because they feel judged. Yeah. Or they feel like they're unjustified. And I just want to say that you don't owe anybody an explanation for why you feel or do what you do at all. It's actually nobody's business. But being open about your emotions and really feeling them and knowing why is so important. Like, don't just push them away. Yeah. I still have days when it comes to grief and loss, when I think about my grandfather who passed away. There is not a day that doesn't go by that I don't think about him. Yeah. And that doesn't mean that I'm not happy. That doesn't mean that I still haven't moved forward, but that doesn't mean that there's still a space that's healing, and that's okay. And it might be forever and in my entire lifetime that is healing, but it doesn't define me. But I know that it is a piece of me, and I don't hide that piece anymore. It's just like how I thought of, a best friend of mine that had passed away quickly, or other grandparents. Things happen that are out of our control. And
Yes.
the universe is ever evolving. We are constantly evolving, and emotions are meant to be felt, and we're meant to feel these things. We don't have them for no reason. Like, there's a reason behind them, and there's a lesson to be learned
Absolutely.
behind them. And so if you constantly suppress it and push that away, it's going to keep happening and keep happening and keep happening until one day you finally say, okay, I'm here, I'm going to listen to this, and I'm going to process this. Because like you said, in regards to when we're suppressing all these emotions, and we're talking about all of a sudden we're doing this self-care work, and we're working on ourselves, and we're working on ourselves, and we start opening. It's like peeling back the layers of an onion, and just
Yes.
think, literally peeling them. I think of Shrek when I say that, peeling back the layers of an onion. But it's true. Like, you are literally stripping away everything that you have suppressed for so long. So you're going to start feeling things that are potentially uncomfortable because you
Yes.
suppressed them because it was uncomfortable at that time. But you got to get comfortable with the uncomfortable when you're dealing with this.
100%. That is really, that really sums up the healing journey, is that you have to get comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And, I will say, so a lot of what you just said really resonates with me deeply, because when I was peeling through those layers, and I was starting to judge myself on, why is it taking so long? I've already been on this journey for so long. Why am I not feeling this way? And this was several years ago, before I really started rooting down into the basis of some of these things. And I'm like, you know what? At the end of the day, you really got to release, forget the judgment of what you think other people think. You've got to release judgment on yourself and give yourself the very permission to take as long as you need, uncover this layer and sit with it. Allow yourself to see and explore, like, this layer. Yeah, this was really painful. This trauma or this loss or this painful moment in my life was, you know, epic.
Yep.
And it deserves its attention to feel those emotions that it accompanies, but also to uncover and see, like, when you start doing that healing work and you start to work through healing those pieces, then to also see, well, what can I take away from this now? What was the thing that I learned, or the opportunity? And when we talk about loss, it's really hard to say, because and I, for a longest time, I'm like, well, there was nothing good that came out of losing my brother. That, shouldn't have happened. But then I look at it and I'm like, okay, well, yeah, it was his time. And, you have to make peace with those things. But look at what those events did, that experience led me to this place where he's helping me navigate how to help other women heal. He's helping me explore this thing that was so painful for me to experience, and to now, with the things that I've learned and the healing I've done and the continuous healing, because we're always healing, we're always growing and evolving, and to be able to take those things and show them that, there's hope. Like, you can come out on the other side. You can find joy in the little things in life, and it's possible to get there.
Yeah.
And it's it's just really interesting when you kind of then see, as I've been doing this deep work the last few years, there's been 5 or 6 additional people that I have lost, grandparent, some old friends, things like that. And it's interesting when you start to take the approach of actually feeling those feelings, like, not just the shock of it, and not just, the layers of that grief tells you're gonna to go through, which of course it's always up and down and wiggle waggle and every which way. But it also gives you a different perspective on, okay, but now let me see, with this loss here, what can I take away? What part of my journey have I not explored yet, or experienced, or worked on healing? And now, with this situation, I can take that piece and start to look deeper into it and start to explore those pieces. And it's really been eye-opening the last few years to see that very situation happen.
Well, and I want to talk about, when we're talking about emotions and we're talking about just like sitting with them, but also not needing any justification or, telling other people why you're doing what you're doing. And this
Yes.
is something that I've really stepped in recently. And, and I believe when you truly like, follow through with your emotions and you implement a self-care practice and you really just step into this like woman and you reclaim this power, but you honor those emotions, so much happens. And some people find it very intimidating when you start walking down this path of, finding yourself. But instead of them saying, like, if they say to you, oh, you're intimidating, it's not that you are intimidating. My mother said this to me today, and it really just like hit me because people were calling me intimidating so often. And I was so confused. I was like,
Oh
why?
my
What is
goodness, really?
intimidating? And my mom said, she's like, no, it's not that you're intimidating. It's that they're intimidated. Something about what you're doing is it has intimidated them because they're uncomfortable with what you're doing, or they're uncomfortable because
Yes.
they haven't done it. And so the word intimidating, or, this can happen when you really find yourself because you become, this woman who really claims her voice. That is
Yes.
something that has happened through this. So like even when we're talking about loss, I remember talking to my husband and we were trying to figure out a wedding date. And I just said to him, I said, well, all these other dates aren't working, but this one's working and I feel like 1000% okay with it. And he was like, what day is it? And it was actually my grandfather's birthday. And
Mm,
he was like, okay, let's do it on your grandpa's birthday.
I
And
love
I
that.
wasn't going to be there. And it was something that was just important because I felt like he was there, though. In some
Mhm.
way, he was there. And so every year on his birthday, I get to celebrate something incredible. I don't get to look back at it as something just like, upsetting, but I get to really know that that person, I got to include them in that space. And there were some people who were like, what are you doing? And why are you doing that? And there were other people who really resonated with it and understood. And I didn't explain to anybody what I was doing. And I was like, either way, I'm marrying my husband and I want to marry him because
Yeah. And
but this
and that is to be celebrated, just
yeah,
as your grandfather's birth and life is to be celebrated. So
exactly.
it just is an enormous day of celebration. And I can definitely see how you could feel so connected to him and knowing that he was there with you that day.
Yeah, and even my aunt, and I didn't know she had this. She gave it to me a month after because she was so nervous to stand up and talk to everyone. And she just finally handed me this note, and she just handed me this note that she felt like intuitively, those divine downloads are intuitively called
Yes.
from my grandfather about what to say. And I just said to her, I said, I would have loved for you to stand up in front of everybody and say this, but I understand that you didn't feel comfortable with that. But thank you for sharing this with me. And she shared this note with me, which I'll forever keep and I'll always have it.
Oh,
And it meant a lot to me. And so, like, there's so much that can happen from loss. Like you're saying, there's so much growth and so much happiness and so many things that can happen from loss. And it's not a terrible thing to say that all these
no.
incredible other things can happen from this, because
Right.
loss is not a space of having to stay in there. There's something to be learned. You get to grow and move forward. And I think that's because you were mentioning that. So I
Yeah.
just wanted to touch on that as well.
It's so true. And, it's one of those things too, when you're going through loss, oftentimes you start to feel guilty about being able to go and have fun without your loved one or experience all these things. And I experienced that. I think everybody probably goes through this guilt factor at some point. But then you start to realize that is the person that you lost, or even yourself. Like, there's no reason to harbor any guilt. That, in fact, while you're here on earth, you're meant to actually experience life and not live in this state. So, at the end of the day, it is a choice, and people have to make the choice to be ready to choose life and to choose themselves.
Yeah.
And it's not always easy to see that when you're in the thick of it. So it does take time, and that's why I always encourage people to be gentle with themselves as they're determining whether that's their choice at that time. Everybody's timeline for choices are different, but to know
Yes.
that they have that choice, and they have the permission, most of all from themselves, to make that choice without guilt and just from love. That's really like the biggest takeaway, I think.
I love it. And I think it's a great transition into the next question that I have for you.
Sure.
It's one of the last questions I have in regards to, you know, is there a message that you just wish all women would know in regards to, this loss of self or grief, or just a message in general that you just really want women to know and take away from
Yeah, it's probably going to sound very familiar to much of what I've just been saying,
this?
but I want women to know that they, first of all, to be gentle with themselves on their journey, wherever they are on their journey, and to know that there are people um, all around them that are here supporting them as they are, experiencing their life. But more than that, I really want women to know that there is really there's hope. There's a way to know that if they are in the thick of feeling lost and not sure how to reclaim themselves or where to go or what they're supposed to be doing in this world, and they're walking around and they just feel like this lost void space in life, I want them to know that there are other people. Most of the people, they look around, have been through things,
Mhm.
and that oftentimes you can see that people are still experiencing life and enjoying life. And so I want them to know um, that it's still possible for them to really find what lights them up, no matter what age they are,
Yeah.
to go after their passion and to reinvigorate that within themselves, and to know that they can still live this life without guilt and still honor their loved ones, still honor their feelings, and still go through all of those experiences. Because of course, life will continue to present those as you move forward, but to choose themselves and to choose life and joy and do it all from the space from their heart. That's really my biggest message. And I know maybe it sounds so corny, but it's pretty much the experience that I've been on. And so I know firsthand how possible it is to come to the other side and feel this state where you feel more at peace than you do at chaos within yourself,
Yeah.
and to feel more love and joy and magic around you. And there really is so much magic. To really be able to open and be aware and see all of the things that life has to offer.
I love the message. And I
Oh,
know it doesn't
thanks.
sound corny. It comes from the heart, and it's
It
exactly
does.
what, was meant to come out and meant to be heard. And so
Yeah.
I know that there's definitely going to be women who are listening to this that'll resonate with it. And so those women who are feeling called to connect further with you and resonate further with your message, can you please let me know the socials, let it know on here. I will also make sure that it is attached in the show notes. But please share your socials on here, please.
Yeah, well, anyone who's listening, if you're on Facebook, feel free to friend me, Terry Gosselin, my personal page. I do have a Facebook group called the Authentic Strength Warriors, and it's a beautiful container that provides inspiration, motivation, healing, guidance, and it's really a space for all of us to connect and kind of hold each other and support each other as we're going through life's adventures. And then I'm also on Instagram at Terry Gosselin Coaching.
Wonderful. So you guys, that'll all be in the show notes. And so if you resonate with Terry, make sure you follow up, you connect with her, you see what she's doing, you follow all her stuff. And I just want to thank you for sharing this space with me, for being vulnerable and open and just having this beautiful conversation with me. I appreciate you. I'm really glad that we got to connect in this way, because I know this will not be the only conversation we'll be having.
Oh, no. I definitely see we'll be having many, many conversations, Kara. So thank
So
you so much for having me today. It's been such a beautiful conversation.
I appreciate you being here. And so on that note, you guys, I will see you guys all in the next episode. Bye, everyone.